After all this time, I'm finally making a proper assembly video for the Turbojet. Let's jump right in. This was actually my first big project and a remix of Katia's turbofan. Now, I won't be doing any written instructions because for most of the parts, I myself don't even have the 3D CAD files. Nevertheless, in my old instruction video, which I will keep linked down below by the way, I only showed you how to convert the turbofan to the turbojet, but never the full build. This is what this video is. It is the full build of the turbojet, so you don't have to be confused anymore like everybody building the turbojet before you was. And actually pretty funny, if you have a look at the old video versus this one, I'm standing in the same room, this is the same wall, just a lot has happened, and I'm sorry that I'm making this video so late. Anyways, as always with my instructions, I want to give you a few print recommendations and then we can start assembly. First up, this is a challenging build. It is not a walk in the park. It's definitely doable, but it just requires attention to detail. Secondly, make sure your printer is well maintained. On a well-maintained printer, you can expect good results. We will both be profiting off this. You will have less print failures and I will have less messages about those print failures in my inbox. Next, please let the parts cool off properly before removing from the build plate and taking off supports. This will reduce warping of the parts themselves, which can occur if you rip it off the hot build plate. And also the support structures will come off much cleaner if you let the parts cool off to room temp before you do so. And you won't be needing an AMS for this build. The tools you'll need is a driver with an H2 hex bit. I'm using the nut wrench you can grab off my profile. And we're also going to be using super glue and a special modern glue that makes a little bit less of a mess. Both very generic. You can grab these on Amazon. Also, we're going to be using flush cutters to remove support structure. And I recommend using lubricant for the bearings if they're not lubricated already. And a heat gun to remove any unwanted stringing. You can grab the BOM on my or Bamboo Lab's website. We both make kits for this project. The difference being mine has metal bearings and Bamboo Lab uses plastic bearings. And you'll have the BOM listed on either of our websites. And with that out of the way, I think we can start assembly. Let's do it. All right, let's jump right in with step number one. We're gonna grab our 5 high pressure compressors and our high pressure compressor spool. We're also going to grab our glue. I'm using a special modeling glue. It makes very little mess and cures relatively fast. And this step is pretty straightforward. We're going to take our compressors and slide them on to our spool one by one. Now there's one thing you want to make sure you get right, and that is the direction you put these onto the spool. So the first one here would be the correct orientation, and the second one here is put on backwards right now. So make sure the compressors are slicing into the air instead of getting pushed. You don't want that. You want more of a slicing motion. So have a look right here. This is the correct orientation, and we're going to slide all of them on there just like that. And if they all fit nicely, we can lock them down using our glue. And I'm just going to use a moderate amount of glue. I do not want there to be too much excess glue squeezing out all the sides. Just a little bit should do perfectly. Let's repeat that for the rest of them. And really make sure they're all in their resting position. And then once yours looks like this, we can set it aside for now and let it cure properly. Okay, for step number 2, we're going to grab our high pressure compressor casing and our high pressure compressor stators. So what we're going to do is install them in here without any glue for now. If you look closely, they have a notch right here and the casing is notched right there, so they slide in one specific direction, so you really can't mess this up too much. If you do try to insert it the wrong way around, it will not fit nicely and you will notice. So that is pretty good and pretty easy. Just like that. All right, now for step number 3, we're gonna grab our compressors and our casing, and we're gonna join these two together. The way we're gonna do this, we're gonna set this on top just like this, and we're gonna use a turning and pushing into the casing motion, and the casing is gonna widen a bit, and the compressors are gonna snap in place. Let's do that real quick. Just like that. Make sure none of the compressors have come loose, and if everything rotates nicely, we can permanently attach the stators. So I'm just gonna take a driver and poke the stators out a little bit in order to get a surface to apply glue to. Now I'm gonna take my modeling glue again and just add a little bit onto the stators and into the grooves of the casing. And then I will slide these into position. I'm gonna use a paper towel to remove any excess glue. And then I'm gonna make sure all of the stators sit flush to the casing. And then I can set this aside and let things cure properly again. All right, for step number 4, we're gonna do a very similar thing to what we did with the high pressure compressors, but with the low pressure turbines. Now, for 3 of these, you can only fit them on here in one specific direction. If you flip them around, things will not fit nicely. So you cannot mess those up, except for the 3rd stage. So what I recommend you doing is grabbing the 4th stage, which is the widest in diameter, and place it onto the back. This one only fits nicely in one specific way, so you cannot mess this up. And then have a look at how the stators are configured, and then match the 3rd stage to that. And if they all seem to fit on nicely, we can lock them in with glue this time. I'm gonna do the 3rd and 4th one first. Okay, now that all 4 of them are tacked on, I'm gonna let this cure properly, and we're gonna move on to step number 5. Okay, this step is very similar to what we did in step number 2. We're gonna grab our low pressure turbine casing and our low pressure turbine stators. And we're gonna do the same as in step number 2. We're just gonna dry fit these in here for now, just like that. Make sure they all fit in nicely, and then we can move on to step number 6. We're just gonna insert the turbines into the casing and then glue the turbine stators in permanently. So for this one, we're gonna insert the spool with the turbines after the 1st stator right here. And again, we're gonna expand the casing and kind of do a push and roll motion to get this thing in there. Again, make sure everything rotates nicely, and then we can glue in the stators. And now we're gonna set this aside and move on to step number 7. All right, for step number 7, we're gonna grab our combustion lining and our swirl dome plate, which is this funny looking part. And this part will slide in right into the lining right there. Now, to get this into its position, we're gonna slide it in between these 2 parts and then insert it into where it actually belongs, just like that. This is what its position should look like, and if you're happy with that, we lock it down with glue. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of glue right here, and also on the other side. Now make sure it sits all the way flush on its resting position, so press it down with something just like that. And then we can set this aside for now and let it cure properly. Okay, for step number 8, we're gonna grab our combustion casing and our last high pressure compressor stator. We're gonna simply insert it like all of them before, just like this. And once we're happy with its fitment, we can lock it down using some more glue. Okay, let this cure for a moment, and then we're on to step number 9. For this step, we're gonna grab our combustion casing again and our combustion liner. We're gonna insert the liner into the casing just like that. And once you made sure everything fits nicely, we can lock it down using some more glue. Okay, step number 10, and we're gonna grab our fuel injectors and our combustion casing / liner. Very easy and simple. We're gonna take the fuel injectors, poke them through the holes right here and onto the swirl plate right there. And make sure you push them in all the way. If you push them in correctly, you will hardly need any glue. So when you have them like this, push on them all the way until you feel them sinking into the plate right here, and now they will not come out. All right, this is what the whole section should look like, and if everything looks good, we can move on to step number 11. Okay, for step number 11, we're gonna grab our low pressure spool and our fan with 3 more compressor stages. This is again very similar to what we did before. We're first gonna dry fit the stages. Again, you want them cutting the air, and then we're gonna set the fan on top. And if everything looks good, we're gonna glue this in place. In the meantime, we're gonna do step number 12. We're gonna grab our low pressure compressor casing and our low pressure compressor stators. And just like the last couple of times, we're gonna insert them without any glue for now, just like that. Okay, for step number 13, we're gonna come back to our low pressure compressors and we're gonna grab our low pressure shaft. Also, we're gonna grab hardware from our kit for the first time. I have just dumped my fasteners into the bin, and we're gonna use 8 screws and nuts. We're not gonna use washers for this one because we wanna prevent the bearing that goes onto the shaft rubbing onto the screws later on. All right, to assemble this, we're simply gonna insert a nut into one of the nut pockets, as I call them. We're gonna take our shaft and push a screw through it into the nut. Can I get it? Yeah, just like that. And then we're gonna tighten the screw. One more time on the opposite side. I'm gonna insert a nut into one of the pockets, take a screw without a washer, and then tighten it down. I'm gonna do this 6 more times and I'll come back to you in a second. All right, this is what it should look like. And on to step number 14, where we're gonna need this and our low pressure casing, as well as a bearing for the first time. So I'm just gonna grab a bearing real quick, one of these, and I'm gonna slide the bearing onto the shaft just like this. And what we're gonna do is insert the low pressure compressors into the casing, again with the push in and turn motion, but this time with the bearing as well. So the bearing will actually snap in place just like the compressors. Let's do that real quick. Just like that. And make sure everything rotates nicely and nothing is rubbing. And then we can permanently attach our stators. So I'm just gonna poke them out again and apply a little bit of glue to the stators, just like that. And then I'm gonna push them in, wipe away any excess glue, and then make sure they sit flush with the casing. And once you have that, you let it cure for a while, and then we can move on to step number 15. All right, for this one, we're gonna grab our inlet and 6 screws and nuts. You can also use washers, but I'm just gonna use the screws and nuts without any washers. Pretty simple step. We're gonna grab our inlet and place it onto the casing and use the grooves to push it in place, just like that. And now we're going to use these holes to bolt it down with the screws and the nuts. Let's do that real quick. All right, so I'm just going to push through a screw, put my driver against it, and then add a nut to the end and start tightening it. And I'm going to do this all around for the other 5 as well. One important note is to first have them on there loosely, because there is a little bit of a gap around here and we want even pressure all around. So first bolt on very loosely, and then later on you can tighten it evenly throughout the inlet. You can grab this nut wrench on my profile, and this is how it looks for me. No gap all around, but tightened evenly. And then what we can do is grab our nose cone and just place it on top like this. Of course, you can also apply some glue right here and then just attach it permanently. I'm going to keep the option of removing it. Okay, step number 16. All right, for step number 16, we're going to grab our high pressure compressors again, and we're also going to take our high pressure turbine and attach it to the shaft. And as you can see, there is indents for the nuts, so the nuts actually sit in there and you can just screw it on. Then I'm going to hold the nut down using my finger and drive a screw with a washer into that nut, just like this, and I'm going to do this all around. I'll see you in a second. Just a quick heads up, we could have attached this earlier before adding the casing. However, I just took my bit out of my driver and I'm just tightening it just with my fingers like this. This is plenty strong and works great. All right, this is what it looks like. On to the next step. Okay, for step number 17, we're gonna grab our low pressure turbine again, and then we're also gonna grab our low pressure shaft. And we're gonna take the low pressure shaft and stick it through the back, so just like that. And now we're gonna attach it using these holes in here. So how I like to do this is take a screw and a washer, place it on my bit just like that, and then push it through front to back, keeping pressure onto my driver. Then I'm going to take my shaft and place it on to that screw right there. And now I can just add a nut on top of that and start tightening it down. So once again, I'm going to take my screw on my driver with a washer and I'm going to poke it through my shaft just like that. I'm going to take a nut and place it on top and start tightening it down. I'm going to do this all around and I'll see you in a second. And once you're done with that, this is what it should look like, and we can move on to step number 18. All right, for step number 18, we're gonna keep the low pressure turbines, and we're also gonna grab our nozzle. This one is pretty fun because we're starting to combine all of these sections together. So we're gonna grab one of our 6204 bearings, and we're gonna place it on top of the shaft at the end here. Make sure it fits snugly all the way and that these surfaces are flush. If you haven't removed the supports correctly, these might not be flush, so make sure you clean up properly. Then we're gonna grab the nozzle, and the same applies for this surface, and we're gonna push the nozzle into the bearing right here. Just like that, and now we're gonna attach these two at these flange points using screws, washers, and nuts. So we're just gonna poke one of the screws through here. We're gonna hold our nut against it and start turning. Not too tight yet. We're gonna do this all around, then tighten them down all the way, and I'll see you in a second once mine is complete. And here's two things you can do to minimize any rubbing that might occur. First of all, push this shaft all the way back, so as hard as you can, push it all the way back there, and then have the turbine casing on there kind of loosely, and figure out a position where nothing is rubbing, just like this one, and then lock that position down. So I'll be locking this position down because nothing is rubbing. All right, all of my screws are attached and nothing is rubbing. There we go. All right, for step number 19, we're going to circle back to our high pressure compressors and high pressure turbine and grab our combustion casing. and we're gonna slide the combustion casing in between the high pressure compressors and the high pressure turbine, just like that. We're gonna lock this down using screws, nuts, and washers. Let's do one real quick. Just like that, and I'm gonna do that all around, and I'll see you in a second. All right, once it looks like this, we can move on to the next step. All right, for step number 20, we're gonna come back to our low pressure turbine. Very, very simple step. We're gonna grab our shaft connector and glue that into the shaft right here, just like that. I'm gonna use a little bit of super glue, just like that, not too much. Slide that in here and on to the next step. All right, step number 21, we're gonna keep our low pressure turbine and grab one of our 6003 bearings. We're gonna slide that onto the shaft just like that. Make sure it is all the way in there. And now we're gonna take our high pressure compressor and turbine and slide that over the bearing just like that. We're gonna attach these sections again using screws, nuts, and washers. Let's do that real quick. Just like this, I'm gonna do this all around, and like always, I'm gonna see you in a second. Okay, make sure everything spins nicely, just like that, nothing is rubbing. And then let's move on. Okay, step number 22, we're getting close to completion here. We're gonna grab our assembled section, grab our low pressure compressors and the last 6003 bearing. We're gonna push it into the spool of the high pressure compressors, just like that. Then we're gonna take our low pressure compressors and simply join these two sections together. Now you might have to rotate this a little bit since the shaft connector is a hexagon, and we have to align those in order for this to fit together. Okay, as always, we're gonna join the flanges using screws, nuts, and washers. Let's do that real quick. Just like that, I'm gonna do that all around and report back to you in a second. There we go. Now at this point, it should be fully functional. You should be able to turn this and everything should run smoothly. Make sure nothing is rubbing against the casing or the stators. And then we can move on to the last step. Now the last step is installing the convergent nozzle and the nozzle cone. Optionally, you can go with the afterburner with the variable nozzle. This is a separate build with separate hardware, but it adds a ton of mechanical goodness to this build. So if you're going with this, obviously you're gonna watch the assembly video for this build. But since this print profile includes the convergent nozzle with the nozzle cone, that is what we're gonna be installing in this video. And this is as straightforward as it gets. We're just gonna attach the convergent nozzle to the rear end as we did all of the sections before using nuts, screws, and washers. One thing I wanna point out is to face the print seam opposite direction of what you'd like to display. So I'm gonna have mine facing the back of the engine. All right, let's mount that real quick. All right, and once you have that, we can grab our nozzle cone and simply push it on to the nozzle just like that. Now, of course, you can glue this on and make it a more permanent solution, but I'm just gonna have that stuck on there just like this. Now, of course, this engine needs a proper engine stand, and you can grab that on my profile. It is made for this engine. You just set it on there just like that, and you can display your engine nicely. Let me show you up close. So the front of the engine stand is just beneath the second high pressure compressor, and the back of the engine stand is just underneath the third low pressure turbine. I know that we jumped from one section to another a lot. However, I love how everything came together in the end. Show this off to your friends, your family, teach your kids how a jet engine works. I hope you enjoyed building this thing as much as I did. As always, if I forgot anything, please leave a comment down below. And I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.